You ready?
So we've done it now. We have actually made it to the century mark 100th episode today. And today, I think the book actually, kind of supports that as well. It's a book called Love Does. So I'll let Chris introduce that. And Kristen, you may or may not have something planned for 100th episode. So I'll
I
let you reveal that if you have one.
I did no, I did not do anything special, but other than to say it feels special being able to live your values every single day and do this stuff with you guys. It's not lost on me that this is 100 episodes in. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, it's not that huge of a number, but it's not a small number either.
Right.
We still have fun doing it, and we're having a great time going through this process. And yeah, I mean, it's a great manifestation of living your values in action, and I appreciate you guys both going this with us. It's pretty cool. I don't know if you guys have any quick high level thoughts on book 100 before we dive in, but it is a pretty cool milestone.
Yeah, it is. I mean, to me, the century mark is always like the one of those things where things start to take off. So I do believe in the power of inertia. And I think, I mean, for us, we've been having fun for so long that it actually surprises us when we reach this number.
Yeah. Yeah, It is pretty crazy. Snow, I know you've done probably 10 of these now. What are your thoughts?
When you were on mute, I was just telling Trio, it's awesome how you guys are keeping to such a unique schedule and really taking on living your values and not letting things get in your way, whether it's like, oh, the AC is out and the kids got to go to grandma's. I think that's a neat thing when you can shift mountains to make simple things happen, because it's sort of like, it's like a training to make anything happen in your life. I really think that you guys are onto something really neat with this club, and I'm happy to be a part of it and hope we can end up getting some people to continue to get people on to transition them to live their values, through becoming members of this club.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. All right, I'm excited for this book. So this book is called Love Does: Discover a Secretly Incredible Life in an Ordinary World by the author Bob Goff, which I don't know if you guys know who Bob Goff is.
I have heard of him. I know he's a pretty highly respected intellectual guy.
Yeah, his day job is a lawyer, but he like moonlights as a writer on the side. But he's got like a really funny outlook on life and a lot of whimsical stories. He's just so happy and positive all the time. I feel like he's been adopted by a lot of Christian circles and stuff like that, which I don't even know. I just know that I've heard his name brought up, Christian circles, things like that.
Oh, really? Okay.
But that wasn't actually how I discovered him, because that wasn't well, actually, I'll get to the reflection. So the reflection title of this one is your values aren't just words, they're actions. And this book is about love and action. It's called Love Does for a reason, because it's love does, right? So this is Bob Goff's like personal memoir and personal stories toward how he applies love in his life, and the whimsical stories of examples of these things, and then the crazy off the wall outcomes that end up coming when you live your values. And one of his values is love, love and action, in general. So it was a really, really fun story. He talks about just different areas of his life where he's experienced this, whether it was through his family or his friends or just putting things in action. I think one of the things that I always remember the most about this book in particular is he talks about like, he's super into like religion and connecting through his faith. But he was like, whenever I'd go to like these Bible studies and stuff, and he was like, it's like all we do is just talk about things we already learned. We don't do things. We don't go do stuff. That's what I want to do. I want to put these things into action and get out there and experience the world. He was like, screw Bible study. Let's go do Bible living. It's his whole like just take in general. So that leads me into this fun story that I wrote this reflection about. It's kind of fun that this is, book 100. There's not really a reflection to this one other than it's a really whimsical, fun story of values and action. So like I said, he tells a lot of really whimsical stories. One Saturday morning, it was about 5 months after Amelia had passed away. So sometime in September, October, I don't know what that exact time frame was. Felicia and I woke up. It was a normal Saturday. Saturdays, I usually give myself some rest time, as stringent in terms of reading, writing, exercise. I still do it, but it's like kind of on my own time when I want to. If I want to go on a long run that day, I'll go on a long run. If I want to go listen to a book for the whole day, I'll listen to an audiobook or read a book all day long or something like that. It's just whatever I want to do, but still expressing myself. So we were just leisurely waking up and watching television, and I don't know what channel it was on, but it was like some news show. It was just in the background. And I heard this like really rambunctious, like old dude talking in his attic. He has like all these books all around him or whatever. This interviewer is like interviewing him, and he's just like spouting all these like incredibly wise things about life and living, and like catching it kind of in the corner of my, out of the corner of my ear or whatever. And it slowly but surely I started to like go like, this guy's like, sounds really interesting. And he's like he's like just full of energy and like life, and and I'm like, who the hell is this dude? So at the end of the interview, they flashed like this little thing. It was like, author Bob Goff, interview with him. And I'm like, I immediately Googled him. I'm like, who the hell is Bob Goff? I was like, this guy is like, just a ball of energy. Seems like really cool. So I discovered that he writes, and saw his little Wikipedia page and came across a couple of his books. And I was like, this sounds kind of cool. Let's do it. So I downloaded that book, and that was my next read that I decided to do. So as I was going through this whole entire book, it was great, loved it, enjoyed it. So I tell Felicia this because she was in the room when she heard this whole guy talking as well. And I was telling her, hey, you remember that guy we like saw randomly on TV? I was like, I read his book. It was really good, actually. I really enjoyed it. And she was like, oh, really cool. Whatever. She doesn't really care, but she was just like, that's neat. So here's where the story gets kind of fun and interesting. So fast forward so let's call that was October. Fast forward to February 14th. So this is Felicia and I, our son was on his way. This is February of 2021. Our son, she was pregnant with our son, Luca, who we'll talk about that in a second, but she was pregnant with him. We're rushed. Had been spending the past 2 months remodeling the basement. If you read my book, the whole fix your basement kind of thing. And that's the end of my story. My house is in chaos. She's on bed rest, 6.5 months pregnant. We had agreed because our life was in chaos at that point. Holidays always suck. Ever since Amelia's not been here with us for Valentine's Day, we were like, we don't want to do anything. So as you guys know, every single day I still journal and write, and one of the things I journal about every single morning is I take a reflection from Joyce Meyer's book at the time, which was Trusting God Day by Day. I would read it and I would write my own thoughts, and Darren Hardy's the other thing that I read and reflect about every single morning. And we're talking about February. So I started this whole entire thing back in March when Amelia was born a year before. So I was almost at the end of my 365-day reflection book with Joyce Meyer. As Felicia and I are coming up on Valentine's Day, she ends up going into labor on Valentine's Day. So that was the day that we actually went to the hospital. As we're running out of the house to go to the hospital because she was going into preterm labor, which, just so everybody knows, my son was born 28 weeks, but he was born fine. Everything was okay. We were kind of expecting it, just given what we went through with Amelia. She throws me this book. I had been coming up, she understood like this is important to me, like the daily reflections. And I was coming up on the year of, the Trusting God Day by Day by Joyce Meyer. And I know her book was almost done. So she was like, hey, I know we weren't getting each other gifts, but, she threw this like little like wrapped up, thing to me. And I opened it up really fast. And it was this book from Bob Goff, which was Live in Grace, Walk in Love, 365-day reflection book about living in grace and walking in love, and his continuation from the Love Does kind of thing. It was probably one of the coolest gifts I think I've ever experienced in my life, just because she saw the way that I was living. She saw what was important to me. She knew that living my values is important. This is one of the ways that I express those things. And, that she went ahead and thought ahead in front of me, because I really hadn't thought about what is the next book I'm going to continue reading. I know I was going to do that, and what was going to be my next source of reflections that I would write about in the morning to get my brain going. I thought it was really, really cool that she did that, number one, and felt very loved from somebody understanding what's important in my life, and then being able to add value to that and to have other people connect around that stuff as well. So that's the values of living your life in action, and like a fun little Love Does kind of story in my life that I wanted to share with everybody. I ended up spending the next year with Bob Goff and his reflection book, and he's become probably like a close mentor of mine. I feel like I listened to his voice every single day and reflected about it, and I highly recommend this guy. He's pretty cool. So that was my fun, whimsical story about values in action and Love Does. I'll pause there. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts.
I guess I'm a little confused about Love Does. Is it just like acts of doing and kindness and generosity? And like attending, because like one thing it seems like you really appreciated how like Felicia saw the way you were living and did something that like was sort of like a way of showing of you that she's been paying attention to you and sort of just like adding on to what you're doing, to sort of like supporting you. So Love Does just sort of like genuine support.
Love, it's love in action. Like love is an action. It's not a word.
Love
is,
the whole whole kind of like love is a verb, not a.
Right. Like just like your values are a verb, they're not a word. That's why the title is, your values aren't just words, they're actions. Like it's one thing to say reflecting every single day or learning something new every single day or playing. It's like, but if you're not doing it, who cares? Like then it's like going to Bible study, right? It's like, cool, we go to value study. Like, play is one of the best values, but I don't do shit. I don't have any fun. That's not what the whole point is. Like that's Bob's, thing in a nutshell is like, do it. Get out there and do the stuff that you care about, Yeah.
Trio, what's your thoughts?
So the values, and there's a lot of values, right? But when you come across a value, it doesn't belong to you. until you live it. You can't keep your values. And you cannot keep any values unless you live it.
You can't call it a value unless you live it.
You can't call it your value.
Right.
The value is not something you say, I have something. It's a value. And the love is a verb. It's very accurately described concept of your values. Your values are not words.
Right.
Your values are your manifestation of that value. If you say I'm playful or I'm competitive, it is in your nature. You can't say, hey, I have competitiveness. Well, either you are or you're not. You can't say I have it, because even if you do, then it's still, you don't have it. So to me, that's one of those things where it is all the actions, values like love, integrity, competitiveness, playfulness, endurance, whatever you want to call your values. If you don't live it, it is not yours, and you can't call it your values. So that's what comes to my head when you're talking about these things. And I think Love Does is a great book, because to me, I really believe in the power of basically, like, for every action, there is a reaction. So you want love, you need to live it. You need to have love. You need to give love for it to bounce back. If you don't, then it won't. Just because you can do an experiment, say, hey, I become angry. I'm angry all the time. Well, people are going to be angry at you. Just because you're angry at them, they're going to be angry at you. I mean, it's just one of those things where I see these actions, these values in actions, right? It only lives in actions. It doesn't live anywhere else. Because if I tell you I am very honest, but then, you know, and I do something that is the opposite of that, then is that a value that I hold, or is it a value that you see me having? So to me, values is all actions. You can use word to refer them, but it doesn't do any justice to the actual, concept or value that you hold. So to me, even if you say, let's say I have a value, let's say in the past, I have the value of integrity, right? So in order for you to have a value, quote unquote, have a value, in order to keep the value, it's something that you do, right? Because if you stop doing it, then that value is not with you anymore.
It reminds me of Tiger Woods, right? I remember an interview with him after his whole wife beat up his car and everything went to shit or whatever, and then he got injured. Anyway, I remember some interview, like maybe a 2 year or a year after that, after he kind of like slowly started to come back into the public eye, and they were like, so like, what? They're like, what the hell happened, Tiger? And he goes, well, I mean, I can't remember the exact words. It was something very close to this. I just kind of I forgot who I was and what was important to me and what I valued in life, and to your exact point, it reminds me of that, of like what Tiger Woods valued at that stage in his life was winning, was lying to people. Like that was the life that he was living and manifesting, and it eventually catches up to you one way or another, right?
Right.
And you could also reset your life going forward again, like, because I do think that was a wake-up call. It was an atomic bomb for him, if you will, and I think that he has changed in a lot of ways. I don't know him personally, obviously, but like it seems like the perspective would be that is the path that he's on until he's not, right? To your point, like values, even, these may be my values today, but unless I stick to them and monitor them and cultivate them and do them in action, they may not be 10, 20 years from now. They should change over time. We've had this conversation, right? Like values should adapt.
You are what you do. I mean, if I say, well, I'm a lawyer, right? And now I'm not a lawyer anymore, can you still call me a lawyer?
Want to define law as if you're just trying to help people to overcome problems,
Yeah,
sure,
so whether or not you get paid for that, it's not what I'm saying. It's like, even if you are not a lawyer to be paid, but you still practice law, then you are a lawyer. If you retire, then you're no longer a lawyer. If I'm an honest person, and then later on I'm not an honest person, therefore I don't have honesty as my value. My value is what I do. Right? I am what I do, right? Because like I said, if you are manifesting a value, you are that person. If you're not, then you're not, because the moment you don't live it, it disappears. And to me, the values is one of those things where it's not a tangible thing. It's not a noun. A value is not a noun. It's not a thing you have, you keep. It is a verb that it's a state of being.
It's an action.
Yeah, it's a state of being. You have to continue to do it to be called that. You can't say, hey, I'm balanced when I'm going to extremities and say, hey, I'm a balance or I'm health conscious, whatever. But then, I go up all these processed food, potato chips or whatever thing that's not healthy for me. And I gulp it down like there's no tomorrow. And I'm just junk food addict, or whatever the case may be. So for me, one of those things where it's a state of being. If you stop being that, there no longer is. So for me, value are all actions. They're all verbs. Like, love does is love. And love essentially will manifest or reflect on you if you do love. If you be competitive, right, then you're going to have a competitive back. It's just one of those things where for every action, there's a reaction. So you want to be inside of whatever value, you have to practice it. The more practice, the more you get back and the more you have it.
What you got, Snow? What are you thinking about?
You guys' conversation really made me think of a lot. And it's interesting because, yeah, you're right. We are actions. Like, I am not, that's how we identify with ourselves. That's how people see us. People see us mowing a yard. They see us taking out trash. They see us teaching kids. They see us playing guitar. Like, so really we are actions and we are verbs. We might think we're being nice, but maybe someone else actually doesn't think we're being nice. So it's also good and important to be like, oh no, like talk among people. Oh, what is honesty? What is, I don't know, what's another value we talked about? What is love? So, because you might think you're actually doing some love, but actually to somebody else, like, no, you aren't,
Right.
you're actually doing something different. So it's interesting because it's an action, but it's also sort of a invisible action,
Right.
It's more of a thought and an idea taking place in some physical realm, and we're calling it something. We're calling that love. We're calling that generosity. A lot of it just gets kind of manifested in our own mind about what this action is.
100%.
And you can end up being delusional in yourself, like the person who thinks they're Spider-Man and they're convinced they're Spider-Man, they have superpowers. So that's why we constantly need feedback, though. Oh yeah, Trio is a really nice guy. It seems like he does value, I don't know, niceness, let's say. So I think that's important to actually check in almost with like the world and people around us. Like, I'm living these values, but is it actually coming across as that?
Right.
And
Right.
it's like it's like it's like baseball. It's like taking swings. It's like every time you take like a swing, you're gonna get better. You're gonna get better. So if you keep trying to be honest, you will become an honest person. And I think that's what's neat too about, let's say, our life quest. If we stay focused, like my life quest these days, I've defined it as building a healthy community, building healthy communities. Because I stay focused on that and actually get feedback from people like, oh, am I building a healthy community? So I think getting that constant feedback is important so that we aren't completely like in our head. We can become better at being loving by doing love, So I think it's like doing makes you better at something. And I think when it comes down to it, we do love being generous. And I think that's why, like, Bob Goff, Love Does, is like a way to live a great life, because being loving and doing loving really just can make you feel like a more, more fulfilled as a human, being able to give back and being loving.
100%. Like, so I don't think I probably described this well in the story as I was explaining it back to you guys, but as I wrote it, that was what I was trying to share, was the validation that I'm doing what I say I want to do. When my own wife is like seeing that learning is important to me and giving me a different book and helping me to write and encouraging me to do these other things because she's seeing the same stuff that I'm hoping that she sees, because that's who I want to be with my life and the actions that I want to reflect out to the world. To your point, it's like, when I hear Bob's stories, the people around him know that love is important for Bob, right? The way that he manifests that every single day and the stuff that he does. Some of these stories are crazy, like that he tells. One of the fun stories in this book was his kids. He encouraged them. They were writing to all these world leaders, but they were worried about a particular issue. So he goes with his children and he helps them to write an individual letter to each one of these world leaders just to help them out to express themselves. And he dedicates his time to these young children of his that have no idea what's going on necessarily. They're just doing this stuff to see what will happen, right? So they send off like 190 letters to world leaders, and lo and behold, they end up getting responses back from a handful of them. They ended up being brought to different places all over the world when these kids were like 10 years old. And it was these little actions that he was doing, helping his kids to encourage it, then helping other people to connect together. It was the compound effect of when you do the shit that you love, that you start to see these crazy whimsical stories like that I was trying to share with my wife, all the things that just end up compounding together to show you are on the right path. You are doing what you say is important to you. And this is an action. Other people are recognizing this, and this is how it's manifesting itself. Is really cool. That's when values are amazing.
And you hit on the right word that I've been trying to figure out is the compounding effect of how the value grows and how it affects you, right? Based on your actions, and only your actions can make the compounding work. Otherwise, it just won't work. Just because you can think about it all day long, but it doesn't add to the compound effect. You can stare at it, you can meditate with it. It doesn't affect you as much as
you can
doing
vision board it.
right? You can vision board all you want, but it doesn't grow in the compound effect manner that an action would make. Because like you said, if he were doing the writing the letters to the world leaders and whatnot, right? That is the expression of love that creates the ripple effects, and things get, it keeps like snowballing into something much, much bigger and much more surprising than we would ever expect. And the only way to do that is by having things in motion.
Action.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he's the Ugandan diplomat to the United States or something like that. And you're like, how the hell is that?
From Uganda or something?
No, he's not. He wanted to be helpful, and he helped them out with some certain stuff because he's a lawyer. And, I don't know, like, you have to read the stories. Because like I said, his stories are all like whimsical, kind of crazy stories sometimes about like how things come about. But it all started with like love as an action and just helping out and doing things. And all of a sudden he's getting invited to become the diplomat for Uganda, like, and he's like, what the hell? Like, and he still is to this day. He's still the diplomat for Uganda.
Yeah, he has a book that I want to read called Undistracted.
Yeah, that was a brand new book that he just started. So he is the U.S. State Department recognizes Goff as the diplomat from Uganda. He's the honorary consul of the Republic of Uganda due to his work with Love Does, formerly known as Restore International. It was a charity that he started. This guy is just such an awesome guy, but it's the compound effect of that. Like, you become the ambassador or the diplomat from Uganda when you do live your values in action. Love Does. Yeah. I think he's the perfect. If Bob Goff ever watches this, I think we should extend the invite of Bob Goff in a club ASAP. He's the exact kind of person that we want in this culture that we're trying to build, to go out there and do the stuff that he loves to do and create meaningful work projects out of it, whether that be this Restore International or writing books or his law profession or whatever it may be. If we can help Bob Goff do that stuff, I want to, because that's what Bob Goff wants you to do as well. He wants you to go help him through his actions, just because you're inspired by people that are living their values.
He wants people to live like he lives love, in terms of even like clubbing, it's the same thing. Live your values.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think the book Love Does is very fitting with our 100th episode for Clubbing, because essentially that's our mission, is to get people to live the value they hold, right? And the only way to have the life you want is to find out your values and live them, not just know them, but live them. And this book essentially, is the quintessential of the core of the mission of our organization.
Yeah. I feel like my values can change or shift from time to time. I feel like I initially thought adventure was sort of like a main value to me, maybe like about a year ago even, but now that's like lower on the list of my values.
I mean, I think they should always be shifting. Like, that's the whole point of values. I think that proved to you that that's maybe not necessarily one of your most important values. Like, maybe was at one point in time, but
I think at certain times, like, I mean, I think somewhat a value, like, especially when you're younger, you know what I mean? Like, your values are going to morph. So I don't think it's saying that's not a value, but it's like in the time period of your life, I think, but when you become a dad, your values are going to shift,
Exactly.
Absolutely.
You are dynamic, right? You can't be fixed to one set of values, because you are constantly changing, in flux. When we are younger, we should value learning above everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're much wiser, you would want to value more of the mentorship or the love, right? So values change, but the core principle still applies. Whatever the value is important to you, the only way you can manifest it is to live it, is to do it, to value does. So borrow from Bob Goff, love does. You have to do things to have values.
I think we should write a book called Value Does.
Values do. Yeah.
Values do, yeah. And to your point, the 100th episode, this is a very interesting conversation. 100 episodes into this whole entire thing, I'm 227 reflections into writing this book. These are our values in action coming together, and who knows where this snowballs from here. But it's already snowballed where we have snow coming every single Monday. Tunes in.
Snowball.
Sarah, by the way, just so you know, Snow is, I think, gonna try to hop on one of these every once in a while because she's now helping me to edit this book so I can get it actually edited.
Like my ex Sarah.
He's also a Clubity member, but,
okay,
yeah.
That's fine.
But we've had random people hop on here. That one episode with that one lady that offered up those 2 awesome books. She was just really cool. I hope she joins more of these in the future. But either way, it doesn't matter. I think that she knows it's clear if you talk to True or I, what we're trying to build with this culture. And that's how you build a culture, right? It's culture is action, what the things that people care about and what they do.
And it's also, Chris, I think it's also that constant refinement too, though. You guys start out doing, like, you used to had values. I don't know what your initial value was for Clubity, but it takes time to refine it. Whether like Bob Goff, love does, it takes time to get good at it being loving and doing a loving action. Because let's say even if you're a charity and you're just trying to give to someplace because you want to help them out, but you might actually not be helping them out in the right way that really is loving, or
Right.
So I think it does take constant refinement, whether it's repetition is the mother of revelation or something.
That's a good saying. Did you just come up with that,
no.
or is that? Yeah.
And so he says that.
I totally agree with you. I was thinking about that the other day about building a culture. I know True and I started this whole thing by saying culture is the strategy. I actually changed that. Culture is what we're building. We're building a culture, but it's not a strategy. Culture isn't a strategy. It is what it is. It's a thing, right? But the funny thing is, we could have easily started 10 businesses by now. The culture takes time to develop. To your point, it had to come from trial and error, and it's still developing every single day. To say that our culture is established at this point in time, we have an idea, and we're certainly moving toward a direction, but it's been morphing and evolving. To even think where we've come from and what we started this whole mission out of, where we are to today, it's almost mind-blowing. You would never be able to connect those dots in a million years, but we just kept doing our values and living those values and actions and trying new things, and then this is where we're at today. And as we continue to add more people into this, we'd understand at our core what we mean when we say Clubity. We didn't totally understand it when that first word was first brought up, by Nickel back in, I want to say it was probably October of that year of 2020. We were like, oh, that's a great idea. And we started to think more about this, but we're like, what does that even mean? And now here we are. We know what we're doing. We know what we're trying to do. It just takes time. Culture takes a long time to develop, it's going to take a lifetime, and then it'll take another lifetime after that and 7 more after that, Yeah.
No, it makes me think about this kind of soil and build, let's say a no-till garden bed, rather than creating a new culture. Sometimes to create a new culture, you got to till up the soil first and then add some compost, and it takes time, and each year it can get better and better from when you just have a pasture of some hard compacted soil. Year after year, if you do the right thing, keep it planted, take care and management, you can build that. And it's almost a better job if you do it slower, and it does take time. So
absolutely. No, it does.
The most important ingredient in anything organic is time. Think about it.
Like cheese and wine.
Yes. The longer the cheese and the longer the wine, it's more flavorful. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, well, definitely with cheese. I don't know much about wine.
So is there any way for us to circumvent that and make cheese much faster without time?
There definitely is companies trying to hasten that, and whether you can do things with temperature sometimes to try to hasten it. But there's really not much, because even with cheddar, people love sharp cheddar. So if they could make, a really sharp cheddar, might take a year, but if they could, from a business standpoint, get it down to 3 or 2 months, that would be huge for people, but for businesses. But I don't think there might be a way out there, but it's not
right. Would I
don't know.
You can't really get a 100-year-old same taste quality of a one bottle by, let's say, you going to tweak the pressure and the temperature and then reduce the time. You can get probably close to it, but not exactly the same. So it's a different product in my mind.
Different products.
Exactly.
You can't recreate it. There was bacteria, there was time, there was Like there's a whole lot of processes, complex systems that ultimately led to an end product. If you just want to try to manufacture something, sure, but like it'll never be the same. That's the whole point. Even if somebody were to ever try to take the idea of Clevany and go say, oh yeah, I get what you guys are trying to do, we can go do that ourselves, they'll never have put in the time to understand how we even got to where we got to in the first place. So when we're 10 years ahead of all that, I remember back when I used to work at Angie's List, there was one of the comments that people used to make there all the time was when these new competitors saw what we had been doing and we're starting up and growing and trying to compete, they were like, we've literally forgotten more than they've even learned than they'll ever be able to learn in this particular industry, which is true. Like, I mean, like at a certain point in time, like you just will have forgotten more about what we've learned in clubbing and what we have applied, than anybody else in the, if they ever wanted to try to do this as we keep going. And the further we keep going, the more that it'll, be even more entrenched into what we're trying to do. And that's the point. You can't recreate this stuff. Like nobody could ever recreate what the hell's been going on with us for the past couple of years. Yeah.
It'd be
Like I
doing.
say, anything organic has to have the time elements.
It's my 6:45 mark. I gotta get going.
Felicia needs some. I got to take care of the kiddo. So, all right. Well, awesome 100th episode, fellas.
Nice.
Thanks for joining. And next week, Snow, you're up. You're the.
Well, no,
presenter,
but no, we're just gonna keep with your books. But also next week I'm gonna be. Yeah, no, next week I'll be here. I think the following week I won't be here. But
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, all right, guys, that was a ton of fun.
Awesome.
The question we can leave for everybody before we jump is, how can you put your values into action in your life? So something to think about. Let us know in the comments, and I will see you on the 101st episode.
All right.